Hello, this is Michael Nicula. Welcome to the Dash Show. Today's topic is a really heavy one, sustainable transportation. We will be talking about ways to encourage Canadians to leave their car on the driveway and take the public transit. This way we would reduce the traffic jams that are clogging the major Canadian cities, and also we will reduce the impact on the environment. At the same time, we'll be talking about ways to expand the public transit network, make it more affordable, and this way will naturally encourage Canadians to use more of it. This and much more in the next segment. Enjoy the show.
Hi everybody, my name is Craig Fay. Welcome to the Dash Show for this week. We're talking about sustainable transportation. And now you're going to be hearing my 2 cents the entire time. So let me introduce our panel. First, let me say we tried to get somebody from the city to come in and discuss transportation, but unfortunately no one was available. But we've got a great panel of people who are going to have a great discussion. So first, we've got Nick Savage, Michael Nicula, and all the way from Ethical Environmental Consulting, Dave Olsen. Now, Nick's got the first question, so let's get it started.
Thanks, Craig. Now, Dave, I'm going to start with you. Could you just talk to us a little bit about what sustainable transportation is?
Absolutely. Sustainable transportation for me is something that will continue indefinitely. That's the definition of the word sustainable. As you may have noticed on our roads, they continue to fill up every single day. And there's really not much sustainable about the transportation system that we have built. And the only complete one that we've really built is the one for cars and trucks. So we need to rethink what sustainable transportation really is. And it certainly does not involve a fossil-fueled mode of transportation. Oil's running out, roads are filling up, cities are getting smaller or expanding, but there's less space for humans. So what does sustainable mean for me? Well, bicycles in particular, walking, but also transit. So because not everybody can cycle and not everybody can walk, and sometimes the distances are just too great for walking or cycling. So we need transit. And right now, we've made transit as difficult as possible to use by putting a fare box in most systems in the world. There are many great examples of fare-free transit, and I'd love to talk about those later in the show and show how a fare-free transit system would make transit sustainable and a long-term economic possibility for everybody.
But that's the crux, really, isn't it, Dave? I mean, how do you make something sustainable while allowing those who use this transportation to use it for free? I mean, the economics seem a bit wonky on that. Could you sort of give us your impressions on how we can get around the economics of a free system of transportation?
I'm glad you brought that up already, because the shining star of the free transit world for me is Hasselt in Belgium. And the people there are now paying less taxes than they did when they didn't have free transit. And the reason being, of course, is that they're spending less money on automobile infrastructure. Automobile infrastructure is incredibly expensive. It's the greatest, in my mind, the greatest public subsidy to private industry that's ever existed. And it's billions, literally billions of dollars every year. So the people in Hasselt in the mid-90s were congested, just like every North American city is, and they were about to build a third freeway around their city to try to alleviate the congestion, much like Metro Toronto has been doing. And instead of spending those billions, they rethought it, and they realized that by taking space away from cars, creating safe, separated bicycle lanes, pedestrian-only downtown sections, and making their transit system 4 to 7 times larger than it currently was, and making it free, would actually cost less money, and in fact it has. Now the taxpayers of Hasselt pay about 1% of their taxes on transit, on the fare-free system, and they've got 99% of their taxes to do many, many other things.
So there you go. Belgians, good for more than just waffles.
Thanks, Craig. Now, if free ridership would equal less cars, and thus you would have to pay for less road maintenance and things to do with obviously cars and trucks and such, would there be other budgetary needs from, let's say, Toronto or Ottawa or any major city that would have to be cut besides road manufacturing and maintenance that in order to have a free system? And if such, which budgetary concerns could we cut from, let's say, the Toronto budget in order to get us to that ridership, that free ridership place?
Can I take this question?
Please.
Thank you. The budget issue is the issue that we're getting most comments on the website on the onlineparty.ca. We have a few issues already posted on free transit, and there are a lot of people who are asking the question, where is the money coming from? I don't want any more taxes. I don't want my tax dollars to go on public transit because I'm driving. So first of all, let's get some sense into this number. So the city of Toronto, we're talking about a few hundred millions. There's a deficit right now, while the fares are one of the highest in the world. A pass in Toronto goes for 120, and it can go even higher. And even under these circumstances, the city's the transit department has a deficit. So this is not sustainable. We can't increase those fares more and more. So we have to look at other ways to fund the public transit. First of all, the gas tax. We know we pay a huge portion when you buy gas. It's $1.20 a liter, whatever, depends on where you live. A large portion of that goes into a tax, gas tax. Where does that money go? That money is supposed to go on roads, and it should go for public transit, to fund public transit. Because when you fund public transit, there's going to be less people on the road, so there's going to be less traffic. So those who are asking, why am I paying taxes if I'm not using public transit? Because you're going to have less traffic, so you can use the roads. If you can afford them, you can use the roads with less traffic. Another source is the oil companies. They have huge profits. Aside from the financial sector, the oil sector has the biggest profits. I would say I wouldn't think twice of imposing a windfall tax on oil corporations and use that money. We're talking here $1 billion. If you put $1 billion into the city of Toronto, you solve that problem. And we're talking here corporations that make tens of billions of dollars. Another way to fund this is to reshuffle the federal and provincial government and to treat this as a social security issue. Why is it a social security? I'm going to let Dave comment on that. But my take on it is, there are lots of people who live at the poverty line. Those people are the people who rely on public transit to go to work, come from work. And currently they pay $120 for the pass. Okay, so you put more people above the poverty line if you give them that $120 line. And I'm really not concerned about the people who can afford to drive to pay more for those who can afford less. Through federal provincial taxes, through gas tax, and also one other thing, it's a smaller portion, out-of-towners tax. So if you're visiting the city and you stay in a hotel, there should be a hotel room tax because you will be visiting the city, taking public transit for free, and we can get that money from you in your hotel room. And out-of-towners means that if you live outside of a city and you commute into town, you have the choice to take public transit for free, or you can pay a toll when you get into the city. So that's how I think we can handle the budget without increasing property tax. I'm not for more taxes. I'm actually for less tax, and I'm actually for cutting the waste, the government waste. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement there.
But in this case, though, I mean, your solutions are fantastic. I really like them. However, obviously, with some of them, you require federal government involvement. And so then at that point, when you've got federal government involvement, of course, then people from Saskatoon, people from small neighborhoods all over Canada are now involved in the question of how to budget transportation in major cities. I can either ask Dave or Michael, but I think my real question is, how do you convince those small rural communities that public transportation in big cities is worth federal government involvement with? Is it a social justice issue? Is it an economics issue? I mean, we've spoken about both of these, but I'd like some discussion on how do we make the argument to those communities that it is important for ridership in big cities to help the poor?
Free public transit is going to make the major cities of Canada more friendly for businesses. One of the criteria a large company, corporation, multinational is looking when they set shop in a city is how friendly is that city for a business? How easy can people get to and from work, or even business partners? If somebody is waiting for somebody to come from Europe for a business meeting, how hard it is for that person to get to Pearson and get downtown Toronto. How long does it take? So all those factors are taken into consideration. If you want to set shop in downtown Toronto, transportation is a factor.
The idea of free transportation is fantastic, and I think you both have made a lot of great points in terms of how we can get there. But the question is, really, as a TTC rider, how is free transportation going to affect my everyday ride? Am I going to deal with incredible levels of congestion? I mean, obviously, Belgium has no city that is nearly as big as Toronto, so it's not. While it is a fantastic, it's a fantastic example, and certainly one we should follow. There is this issue of congestion. I mean, the TTC is congested enough as it is, and with free ridership, do you think either of you think it's possible that people would become sick and tired of riding it because of its congestion and wait lines and such?
Well, I'm not advocating to go fare free tomorrow, and I'm not sure too many people would. What the people of Hasselt did was they spent a year expanding their transit system to prepare for the inevitable deluge of new passengers. And in fact, the day that they went fare free, the ridership went up 783%. So, and by the end of that year, because that was July 1st, 1997, and by the end of 1997, their ridership had gone up to 900% more than before it was fare free. So you can expect similar things in Toronto and any other city. So the point being is that we start spending money on transit infrastructure. Why is it crowded? Well, because transit infrastructure isn't being bought. Why isn't it being bought? Well, to be frankly honest, it's because the lobbyists for transit infrastructure companies, buses, trains, whatnot, are not nearly as vocal and strong, and probably don't contribute as much to government coffers as the petroleum industry, as the road building industries do. So, government is there to support private interests. That's what Adam Smith told us 200 years ago. That's the reality. We'd love it if government actually represented human interests, but the reality is they represent corporate interests. So we need corporations that build transit infrastructure to step up and say, hey, start funneling some of that tax money to us. If they do that, we're going to have better transit systems. Of course, there's lots of catch-22s in that scenario. So how do we get it all going to start with? Well, this is one start, this TV show. It's going to plant a few seeds, and if people start talking and maybe even taking over the government and implementing some of these plans, then we're going to see some changes.
I think we've all found ourselves to be a little frustrated with our commute from time to time. I mean, I think we've all seen those giant monstrosities, lane and a half wide, just sitting in gridlock, spewing noxious gases into the atmosphere. And those are just the passengers next to you on the bus. I mean, we've actually got a pretty interesting problem when you think about it in North America. We've got an obesity epidemic and an energy shortage, which on one hand is people not spending enough energy to get around, and on the other hand, people spending too much energy to get around. Like we'll complain about having to pay $1.50 for a liter of gasoline, which will take you across town, and then not think about it and pay $2 a liter for Coke Zero, which gives you absolutely no nutrients or energy. Cycling would actually seem to be a good solution to this problem. It's easy to do, it's cheap, it's efficient, it's clean, relatively quick, and it keeps you healthy. That is, if you didn't have to share the road with Ford Bone Crushers and Toyota Murder Wagons. I mean, we got to face the facts. Bicycles aren't cars, and they're not bicycles aren't cars, and they're not pedestrians. And we really haven't done a very good job of mixing all those together. In fact, the only real solution that they've had has come from Honda, which has designed the hood of their new Civics to scoop people up and over the car when they're hit, which is better than being under it, but I think we can do better. In theory, public transportation should be more popular than chocolate-covered Viagra. I mean, here's a system where for a nominal fee you get to sit, read, eat, sleep while someone else takes you to work. And somehow we've managed to make that less appealing than paying hundreds of dollars a month in car payments, gas, and insurance to sit on a highway staring at somebody's taillights and waiting your turn to move 12 meters. I think we really need to acknowledge the fact that maybe the biggest problem with public transportation is the people. I mean, the TTC could fly me door to door on a magic carpet, and as soon as I've got to share that thing with a meth addict begging me for change, I'm going to want to buy a Hummer. I mean, a lot of times, I think we need to realize that transportation is a lot like a washroom. It's very essential to everyday life, but as soon as you make it public, it starts smelling like urine and people start avoiding it.
Welcome back. You want to know my opinion? My opinion is that in Canada we can afford free public transit. I think the numbers that if you add up the total budgets of all the public transit systems in the major Canadian cities, the numbers pale in comparison to, let's say, the military budget in Canada. So I think we can get federal funding, provincial, local funding to cover the cost of public transit. If we make it free, then more Canadians will be encouraged to use the public transit. This way we'll have a social impact and also have less impact on the environment. You don't have to agree with me if you think that it's too much for the public budget to cover. Go comment and vote on the website. There are multiple issues on this topic. The website is www.onlineparty.ca. Thank you for watching the show.